Hello everyone. Regarding the death of the author, the essay which says the reader's view is just as valuable as the author's, there is an offshoot dilemma which could persuade people to indulge in the death of the author where they previously might not have, even if such a reason to change your mind on the matter is less organic. This concerns separating the art from the artist, a mental exercise done usually after a beloved author has been exposed for critical wrongdoing, or having a political opinion that contradicts a portion of the author's fanbase. In light of controversy surrounding the creator of works of fiction, there are some who choose not to separate the art from the artist, and partake in rituals which involve boycotting, name erasure, book burning, and the egregious examples among them harass people who are not processing the controversy in the same way they have chosen. They perceive a strong correlation between financially supporting the author by purchasing their works, thereby increasing the disgraced person's financial standing and quality of life, and condoning their actions or agreeing with their views, thereby boosting the signal of their influence on the world and ideologically aligning with them. It is often the biggest and lifelong fans who separate the iconic art from the disgraced artist, when once they might have viewed the texts through the lens of authorial intent, they now instead focus on what the text means to them, and how the characters and world made them the person they are today. Even for the pragmatic, responsible reader, it is a stressful time, and with the exception of harassing and spiting the people processing it differently, I don't believe there's a wrong way to cope with the revelation of your favourite author turning out to be a monster, or at least an advocate of something you at heart oppose. As a measure to prevent this unnecessary turmoil, I think we as readers should preemptively separate all art from their artists. Similar to the inevitability of the death of the author, I think all art should be treated as though the artist is human, is capable of bad deeds, of making mistakes, of not entirely aligning with your worldviews. I believe a better reader-author relationship is fostered if the reader comes to terms with the potentiality that, for example, if they are right-wing, their favourite artist may be left-wing, or vice versa. Maybe we should think of it as Schrodinger's author. Take inspiration from the theory of quantum mechanics of the same namesake, Schrodinger's cat. Until you see inside the box, the author is simultaneously a paragon of virtue who aligns with all your worldviews, and a monster that has done either something morally reprehensible and/or contradicts your political views. I am being slightly facetious, but I think the metaphor stands. If we separate the art from the artist before they are cancelled or disgraced, then in this scenario, we have already pre-processed and grappled with the idea that we don't truly know the author, and the author will likely never know we exist. After all, they do say never meet your idols for a reason. JK Rowling is an exceptional case for only one reason. She has sold more than 600 million copies of the Harry Potter book series, and the 8 films based on her stories grossed over $7.7 billion, not to mention the video game Hogwarts Legacy, which, despite attempts to a boycott, which arguably induced a Streisand effect event and bolstered it, transferred over 40 million copies. This culminates in JK Rowling's net worth of over $1.2 billion. I preface this to beg a question. Was JK Rowling ever really going to face a career-ending consequence for being vocal on her views about literally anything? No, we learn that, in reality, JK Rowling's views on transgenderism is nothing special. She has just become a quasi-activist on the subject because the publishing, film, games, and now television industries are financially incentivized to ignore it, regardless of which political wing she argued for. This is simply the reality of hypocritical performative virtue of tentpole entertainment industries. And this is to point out that until an author is utterly impervious from the consequences for sharing their true beliefs, we do not know how they actually think. And that's fine, so long as we separate the art from the artist and see the reader-author relationship for what it really is, a monetary transaction. we will process everything much easier. The death of the author posits that as soon as the author has published their works, it belongs to us, the readers, just as much as it does the author. Likewise, authors who are disgraced might befall a kind of figurative, symbolic death in the eyes of the reader, allowing readers to cherish the stories for themselves and reclaim them. With a good understanding that we do not know the true opinions for every single potential political issue the author harbours. But what if the dilemma does not concern ideological rifts, but morality for which there is an overwhelming consensus for behaviour? Whereas the controversy around JK Rowling concerns a fringe issue the world has not collectively figured out yet. The case of Neil Gaiman's cancellation is more decisive. The Gaiman controversy involves allegations of sexual misconduct that has led to his immediate industry distancing. These allegations represent a more binary divide between the pro-separation crowd and the pro-cancellation crowd. These allegations also tend to trigger the morality clause. The morality clause is one of the two clauses in contracts that are relevant for this discussion. The contracts agreed on for both JK Rowling and Neil Gaiman with their respective publishers are private, but we can infer, based on aid from industry analysts and their current status, that the morality clause has been applied to one and not the other. The morality clause is often included in contracts as a non-negotiable term set by the publishers, that if the author is alleged with some level of authenticity to have committed lawful wrongdoing, they have the ability to back out of prior agreements in order to protect the company's reputation. The pay or play clause is reserved for when the author employed by the publishers has done something not innately against the law, but something which might have tempted the publisher to eject them had the clause not been in the contract. The clause states that even if an author is disgraced and fired by their publisher, they will be paid as though nothing had happened. It guarantees they are financially insulated from public backlash. Now, with these two clauses in mind, one might consider that JK Rowling, unlike Neil Gaiman, is not likely only impervious to the repercussions of her notoriety because of her sheer influence in the publishing and film industries, but also has a deliberate preemptive clause in her contract, which is common practice in said industries. One might also consider this a crucial yet overlooked angle on the pro-separation argument. The singular author, the lone human being that has created the work in popular culture, according to industry analysts, receives 10 to 15% in royalties of the total profits. Make no mistake, JK Rowling makes the most money, obviously. After all, 10 to 15% is not divided, it goes to that one artist. However, the remaining 85 to 90% is divided, invariably, to everyone else, both above the line and below the line. In publishing, this majority percentage is strewn out to a vast team of editors, cover designers, literary law firms, warehouse staff, namely, all the people who are vital to keep the machine going that enables both digital and physical publishing to go smoothly. Given this, when a work of fiction becomes a main artery in a larger ecosystem which so many people are reliant on for quality of life, it begins to feel careless to pursue the destruction of so many careers, all in the name of destroying one. No matter how financially affluent they are, this very affluence is what would make J.K. Rowling safe in the event of the sudden evaporation of the Harry Potter franchise in all industries. The author would be fine due to assets, clauses and contracts which protect them, and plenty of opportunities otherwise. It is everyone else who would suffer. Unfortunately, by the time the multi-million or multi-billion-dollar franchises written by previously universally beloved but now partially disgraced authors become a crucial artery in an ecosystem, it's too late. It's too late to, in hindsight, suddenly prioritize virtue over escapism for the sake of ideology or even morality. The industry will never cede to the demands and boycotts if they stand to grow the economy through it. And there's always the risk of boycotts backfiring, in the case of Hogwarts Legacy. This is all avoided if we preemptively separate the art from the artist. Akin to the death of the author, we should bring ourselves to perceive it as the author relinquishing their creation to the ecosystem, in the same way they gift their creation for the readers to identify themselves with and claim as their own. To me, at least, this seems to me the only way to offset the inevitable, the temporal Schrodinger's author turmoil that we feel when such a controversy erupts. What if the artist is already separated from the art? The imperative I am here proposing to preempt the separation of art from the artist comes with the understanding that the author and their works are not already separate. But what if they were? Historical and religious texts such as Beowulf, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Poetic Edda, accompanies no concrete evidence of who their authors were. In spite of this, they are still debated today, and scholars ever since have analysed only the text itself in order to come to any conclusions. In these scenarios, the author has been long dead. There is no squabbling over the death of the author or separating the art from the artist. And some of it is so historical that even when we do know the questionable origins of their creations, we are so culturally detached from their origins, we interact with it intellectually instead of emotionally. Unlike today, we cannot artificially inflate or vehemently criticise historical works for which there is no recorded author, because of the author. Instead, the work speaks for itself, and something amazing happens. Since the texts are historical, they are hard to read, but those that could read it make modernised retellings or unique stories inspired by them. Then future authors, inspired by those works, write their own stories, and so on, until we arrived where we are today. If one was to be consistent with their arguments for not separating the art from the artist, they would be compelled to feel guilt for reading anything in the modern era, since any work has sprouted from the vein of inspiration originated in these historical texts. That they may have been written by people who held values not entirely compatible with modern society does not obfuscate or suddenly dilute the conversation. People struggle with the outdated inhibitions of H.P. Lovecraft, the author of an entire genre. In speaking about the mental exercise of separating the art from the artist, I am abiding by what the sentence comprised by those words in that order evoke in most people, most readers who make up the financial proceeds of most books and therefore determine the monetary outcome of most authors. I would rather be precise and strike the heart of the issue instead of using semantic sleight of hand to make you confused about what separating the art from the artist actually means. I mean to confront the inevitability of the issue and its unrelenting nature, because I see no reason why we would ever stop having this problem. Even preemptively separating the art from the artist isn't a cure that immunises us from the stress of reading the news and seeing the artist we have read for so long has turned out to be something one hemisphere of our brain demands us to hate, but I believe it could be an antidote that treats its effects. I do not think it's a coincidence that the emotional turmoil surrounding JK Rowling's views has mostly been felt by older Gen Z or younger millennials. They were all children when they were engrossed by the wizarding world of Harry Potter, and thus grew attached with the franchise and allowed it to define their upbringing. I am not suggesting we should make children become cynical towards the issue. I'm just saying such whimsical and emotional resonance contrasts against the pragmatic and necessary act of separating the art from the artist. Indeed, emotions are a significant contributor to how one either does or does not separate the art from the artist, particularly when it comes to refusing the separation. The discourse is often suffocated in negative emotion, When the anti-separation position is taken, it is rarely, if not never, said that we should not separate the two because to do so would undermine the author's accomplishments and strip away the credit and relevance the author has earned. Negative emotions seem to prevail in this context. So long as the creative industries remain as they always have been, where a singular human creator is the progenitor in all popular forms of escapism, and thus becomes eternally both the emblem and the beneficiary of its success, it will never be a sustainable nor organic way of reading. To constantly sidetrack your journey through literature for the sake of avoiding issue after issue on an arbitrary personal basis. This is why I believe separating the art from the artist is an imperative, something we must do to foster a consistent, mature and reliable relationship from reader to author.